Hey everybody, welcome to the development series for the making of my Avengers Endgame custom LEGO minifigure showcase videos coming this year. We're finally doing this. This is going to be the series that'll go just a little more in depth on the process for making each figure, so when I do the showcases, I can actually focus on showcasing. So we did this last year for Infinity War and it was a ton of fun leading up, and I'm so excited to be doing this again now for Endgame. So we're getting started with Tony Stark in the Iron Man Mark 85 armor as seen in the second half of the movie. And of course, spoiler warning, I'm not going to be holding back in these videos. I really hope you saw the movie. And so going into the process of making the Iron Man Mark 85, I knew that I wanted to carry over a couple different techniques from the Mark 50 from Avengers Infinity War last year. And so you'll kind of notice this figure definitely does look a little bit similar in terms of the dark red water-based acrylic primary color that I used in dark red there, along with the minimal sculpting work that is so far gone into it. And so you can kind of see that on the chest a little bit. And then also, of course, I did sculpt the shoulder pads. And what's really great about doing this is, of course, the idea here is to not bulk out the suit, not to, add a ton of definition or add a ton of engraved detail into every little section of where I may have done some sculpting work, but instead to just kind of balance out the bulk that kind of comes in with Lego's helmet, which has always kind of been just ever so slightly oversized, but I personally have always really loved it. So this time I had to sand the hell out of the helmet because, of course, the Mark 85 has just about Tony's smoothest helmet to date. So not only did I sand most of the definition off of the back of the helmet, but I also had to sand on the top because once I had sanded all of the back of the helmet, it kind of made the faceplate stick up a little bit. So I had to sand the top of the faceplate a little bit. And then also a big part of this was sanding the sides as well. The whole Mark 85 helmet just needed to look a lot tighter. And so that's what I did here. I think it turned out looking really great. And usually I don't actually paint a base color of gold onto the faceplates. I'll usually try to just keep Lego's gold color, but this time because I sanded the top of the faceplate, I really had to paint it up myself. And so once all of that was done and I started to get, make some really good significant progress on the helmet, I did finally move down toward the rest of the torso and the arms. And so essentially the approach that was taken here, like I said, similar to last year's Mark 50, was to just sculpt a very simple, smooth chest plate onto the top of the torso so that I could then kind of paint all the detail on top of that. And then these little minimal bits of sculpting on the chest and on the shoulder pads definitely helps, like I said, in balancing out the proportions of the figure to some extent, which I think really worked out here, even kind of better than the Mark 50. And so I'm really proud of the way it turned out. One thing that I did make sure to do this time was to kind of sculpt in that little rivet on the top of the chest piece, along with making sure the arc reactor was actually in the center, because the Mark 50 last year was kind of too high up and looked a little weird. This time though, I'm really happy with how the rest of the torso is turning out. The design is about as accurate as I could have gotten it, and I'm honestly surprised with just about how good it's turned out thus far. And also the arms are about 70% done with those shoulder pads now fully painted up as well. Again, trying to make them as accurate as I can, but of course one thing that is always a consistent element when making Iron Man suits is the process of selection and just trying to cram in as much detail as you can to make sure that the design is still recognizable as the Mark 85 on both arms. And so I think it's turning out really, really nicely for the most part. And honestly, guys, I would have to say this is so far already my favorite Iron Man suit to date. And the legs are still blank. The back of the torso is blank. I haven't painted the HUD inside the helmet. I still haven't even painted the standard hands or the air flaps, which I'll talk about in a second. But I did, however, paint the nano gauntlet on his right hand. The Infinity Stones are painted onto this hand here. I think that they turned out looking really awesome. Now, one thing that I quickly realized when painting this hand was that even though I wanted to pack this with even more detail than you're already seeing, there just simply isn't enough room on a minifigure hand to pack in any extreme amount of detail. It's just not enough space. So I'm honestly just really happy that I was able to do this, and I think it's turned out looking really awesome so far, and it did make for one hell of a picture, which I'm pretty proud of. And speaking of that picture, you'll also notice that I did, of course, already paint a Tony Stark head. This is, of course, based on how he he appears in his final moments in Endgame as he is about to do the snap toward the end of the battle. So I kind of tried to copy the blood that's on his face, basing that off of some leaked images from the movie. I mean, I've already seen Endgame 6 times, but it wasn't enough for me to remember small details like that. So that was a little bit of a pain to find reference to be able to paint up that face. I did paint the neck in red, and I did decide to use the aggressive Tony Stark facial expression from the original Tony Stark head, because the newer Tony Stark heads don't really capture the right emotion that I would be looking for, you know, in my Tony Stark minifigure as he's about to do the snap. And so I decided to just opt in for the original classic aggressive Tony Stark facial expression. And also I did use a pair of tiny tactical glove tops, my first time ever for an Iron Man suit, this time painted in the dark red water-based metallic paint there, and I think they look really awesome, complement the minifigure so well, and I kind of wish I was doing that you know, before this minifigure, but I'm glad that I'm doing it for, you know, what is going to be essentially the last new Iron Man suit, because I mean, there of course will be no new Iron Man armor suits from Tony Stark after Endgame now. And also, of course, if you saw in the picture, I did paint a new hairpiece for Robert Downey Jr. here in his final appearance as Tony Stark, and so I essentially tried to mimic that same frosted effect that he has post time jump in the movie. And so I started with a base color of dark brown, but because the highlights within his hair are more of like a blonde and the gray is more so on his facial hair, I pretty much did exactly that, and I kind of like did a bit of tan airbrushing all over the hairpiece, and then I had to balance it out a little bit with some more dark brown, and then I tried to add a little bit more on the sideburns to make sure that it kind of stood out a little bit more there, and it was a little bit tedious, but I managed to pull that off after a couple of sessions. And so finally, of course, the Mark 85 will also have the big like starfish looking air flaps that he had from Endgame, because this really amazing customizer over on Instagram and Flickr, Tuminio, he makes some absolutely amazing figures and some amazing parts that he actually has cast himself, and they're really great quality, and I absolutely cannot wait to show you guys what his air flaps from Endgame are going to look like on the Mark 85 once I've got them all painted up. Right now I've just got them in a base color of black, but I'll drop a link to his profile down below. He makes some amazing parts, and I know those wings are really going to do a lot to complement the figure and really just act as the cherry on top. And this is definitely going to be by far my best Iron Man suit to date, I think. And even though I barely even have half of it done, the rest of the process is mostly going to be the same, just painting more and more detail through the process of selection and just trying to make sure I put on the most recognizable parts of the design of the Mark 85 onto my Lego minifigure here. So I figure, hey, we'll just do this video now and get the ball rolling. But that is gonna do it. Thank you guys so much for being so patient with me on this project. A lot of things have changed now after the release, and I finally have sufficient reference for most of the minifigures I'm making to celebrate the movie. Now, because the Endgame showcase obviously wasn't a launch day video, I personally think it's probably gonna be best to do separate showcases in like 2s and 3s as I slowly build toward one big video that isn't necessarily a showcase video, but just kind of maybe a wrap-up video that'll still have all of the minifigures in the same big shot at the end. But regardless, if you'd like to keep up with all the progress being made, it's all posted over on my Patreon first. If you'd like to consider supporting the channel, I actually just posted the first picture of Pepper's rescue helmet on there because Tuminio also made accessories for her that I'll be using on my own figure, and I just couldn't resist the urge to paint up that helmet after he sent it over, even though right now I'm focusing on the original 6 Avengers first. So that's all over there right now. I'll also be posting an updated roster that kind of makes clear all the Endgame minifigures I'm making now, because the original list that I posted at the beginning of the year has really just kind of become obsolete and very outdated. But otherwise, guys, you can catch the teasers like these over on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And this, of course, is all way before even these making of videos will make it to the channel. So thank you guys again. That is gonna do it. I'm going to get back to work on these minifigures. This is pretty much the big project of the summer and fall, and so I really, like I said, appreciate you guys being so patient with me. And so on that note, guys, I'm thinking about maybe possibly doing an FAQ at the end of these videos. I know that was kind of something I did last year with the Infinity War making of videos, so maybe I'll do that again. So you can definitely drop whatever questions you have down below, and I'll see if I can catch a few of those. But I'll catch you in the next video. All right, take care. Bye-bye.